freedom, a Buddhist Dharma in the modern context.
Welcome to Path to Freedom. And in this program, what we do on every single Poyaday is to discuss Buddhism in extent to a point where we can apply the teachings that are brought in Buddhism to our day-to-day lives. And today, to lead on the discussion about suffering, we have the senior lecturer, the Venerable Galkande Dhammananda Thera, also joining with us today. He's also the head of the Department of History, Faculty of Social Sciences of the University of California. And today, to bring about this discussion, we have right next to me, Uwin and Sherifa also joining in with us today. Venerable Thero, now, in the previous program, we discussed about the Four Noble Truths, how we can address suffering and how we can gradually escape it to the point where we'll no longer be suffering. But today, in this program, since we are talking about suffering itself, could you elaborate what suffering is as entrance to the discussion?
Yes. When we hear the word suffering, it gives a negative meaning. Suffering, sadness. It is not happiness, and none of us expect some things, you know. And when you hear in Buddhism, there are Four Noble Truths, and first one is suffering. Okay, so whether Buddhism suggests everything is very, very negative and nothing for us to be happy, or is that? No. Buddhism discusses something very different. This discussion on suffering, it has three levels. Okay, one, if I may use the Pali word, dukkha, that is the ordinary suffering. Okay, ordinary, as in our ordinary life, there are things, right, that we get sick, and sometimes those people who we love to be with, we depart, and people die. All these things are, normal things, right? Day-to-day life, we have to face such situations. That is the first level of suffering. And it is, what makes you unhappy, right? It is sad. Whoever in this world will see, yes, it is not happy things. So that is the first level of suffering.
Things which are unavoidable.
Unavoidable, yes. That is the first level. And second level, we call it viparinama dukkha. That is the sadness or suffering situation that is created with the impermanence. That means the changing nature of everything. Okay, it is the viparinama dukkha. Things are changing, and that creates, we like to see things
remain the same way.
Same way, but it doesn't.
It does not.
It changes. So that is the second level. That also, I think we all can understand, and anyone will say, yes, it is the nature and things change, and we expect to see unchanging things, but it changes. So it creates suffering. And these two levels are not very philosophical, or not, everyone will say, yes, it is. So what is the big thing there, right? So things are changing. The third level is the most important, and the third level is what Buddhism introduced as suffering. It is not ordinary suffering. Okay, we call it in Pali sankhara dukkha. Sankhara dukkha means conditioned suffering, or conditioned things, based on conditioned things. And this is something we have to elaborate, we have to explain. So I like to introduce these three levels. Dukkha, ordinary, unavoidable suffering. Viparinama dukkha, the suffering that is created with this changing nature of the world. And then the sankhara dukkha, the third and the most important, and what we need to go into deep explanation. So these are the three levels, and most important thing is the third one, and that is where that I can explain Buddhism doesn't say something very negative. The first two levels everyone in this world will accept. It is the same.
Yeah.
But the third level is the most important and more philosophical thing.
Because talking about the first level, I think we'll start over there. In terms of suffering, I think everybody has a negative connotation to it. But there is that positive reinforcement in the sense it is a survival trait. Suffering or pain makes you scared, brings on fear, and makes you survive in terms of if there is a kid, if you're afraid that he or she might actually get into an accident if they go into a dangerous environment, that activates your protective instincts, and that is a survival trait. So in terms of suffering, how do we actually embrace it into our life in a sense, all right, this is something that is necessary, but you have to overcome it? How do you actually make that difference in the sense, all right, this is important as well?
Well, if we give that important, that is how we look at it. Okay, the unavoidable situations that we suggested, those are the nature of this world, right? So the way we give the value is our own work, but this is the nature, right? And we all have to face, and we all have come to this level after facing such situations. And as you suggested, among the other living beings, I think all the living beings have this ability to face such situations. As human beings, we have developed our skills to face such situations, and perhaps they are in our genes. Those people who are living fishing community people, they have faced lots of sadness. Most of the time, women, husbands, sometimes they don't come back. Okay, so in generations they have faced such situations. So they have that ability to.
So they're molded according to their situation,
That's right.
according to what they've faced all
That's
throughout
right.
their life.
Yeah. So that is the first level, and yes, people are coping up such situations, and they develop certain tools to cope up those situations.
And Clara, what about those people who might not have those tools in their life? I mean, sometimes it is the reality of life is you have connections, you have people you care for, and sometimes because of the nature of life, like you said, impermanence, they do pass away. There are people who sometimes the dearly beloved ones they lose in their life, and that suffering becomes a part of their life.
Like
Sometimes they can't let go of that suffering. So in terms of that, wouldn't that suffering become the eclipse of their life, and all the other stuff may seem trivial or unnecessary for them? How do they cope with it?
Well, I think people, human beings, I think they all have certain ways of facing such situations, particularly religion. Any religion, we believe that maybe the creator God, okay, he or she, looking at us, or this is the will of the God, or whatever. Those are the tools, right, to face such situations. And now he or she is with the, with the God or God's hand.
In a better place.
The better place.
Kind of.
There are
So,
people who,
yeah.
who don't have any religious beliefs as well. There are people,
Atheists, right?
yeah, atheists or agnostics. There are
Yeah.
people who don't believe in the supernatural. So
Yeah.
those people also, when they have experienced a loss, it's profound for
Yeah.
them. So they have to exist through it. Philosophically, how do we talk about this?
Well, though there are people who do not believe in religion, yes, I think they have left religion. Purposely, with certain understanding. Okay, it is their own way of reading things, and they find no. That person do not identify himself or herself as with a religion.
Yeah.
It is her or his, decision. Such people, again, when they lose someone, the sadness comes as ordinary human being, and if if someone identify himself or herself with the religion, then we can help with the tools that is there in religion. Every religion you will have these tools to
Console yourself.
that's right, to face the first level or second level of sadness. So I think it is there. And even those who, my understanding, those who do not follow any religion, they have in a way have gone beyond that level of, they do not need anymore the religious belief to help themselves, console themselves, but they have that ability. Okay, if they still, if they need that support, they will remain in the religion. Okay, that is how I understand. The working with the people, those they identify themselves as secular, or what is the word you use?
Atheist.
Atheist. They are educated and they have the ability to handle such situations. There will be, and in a way, sometimes they come to meet us. They do not want religious something, but sometimes they want to tell us, they want someone to listen, a good listener. Okay, so that is another way of helping. Okay,
Support structure.
yes.
I think saying it out loud or expressing yourself to someone calms you down. I think it applies to many things. So since we are on this topic of understandable suffering now, this is obviously something we know is unavoidable and happens in life. But Venerable Thero also touched on a third level of suffering. So how does one identify in which level, where they stand in terms of suffering? We understand the first one and the second one, but the third one.
Yeah, third one, in a way, in the previous discussion, we touched a little bit. Buddhism talk about how the conditions, the ideas created based on your five doors or five senses, right? Through your eyes, ears, and the taste or the touch and all these things. How we perceive, how we created a world in us, okay? How we see the world, okay? So that is created based on the information that we gather through our five senses, okay? And there is one teaching called Madhupindika Sutta, that is the name of that sermon, Madhupindika Sutta, where it is explained the process of creating those conditioned ideas. Through your eyes, you see someone or something outside. And after seeing someone or something, you started creating the, first level, you just mere seeing something. And after that, you, based on that experience, you start, you start feeling about that what you see, and
Or
after
you draw
that,
a picture of that person
that's right,
within yourself.
and then develop certain ideas, and then we call it creating prapancha, or creating solid ideas. And after that, that is what I discussed last discussion, that files with
Files.
data.
Right.
Okay, so those files are created based on those experiences.
Like blueprints in your
Pardon?
mind, where you compare the new experiences with the existing blueprints in your head, and then you compare with them, and that's the reason, the cause of the suffering, because you compare and then you fail, you start sprouting some kind of suffering from there on.
That's right. The problem is we do not know how these ideas are created. And we think those ideas are permanent, ideas are reality, and with these ideas we can understand the world. And we never understand those ideas are created in a particular context and based on particular way of behavior, and sometimes the person who collected those data also is something, changing.
So I think like a very easy example would be, let's say we meet someone when they're suffering, when they're going through depression, and then you see that person and you paint a picture in your head that this person is always low key.
That's right.
But then eventually when the person has got over it, when we see the person is bubbly and nice. So or maybe like we see that person talking to another person in that attitude and we'll be like, okay, this person is only behaving like that with us. So maybe the person has a problem with me. So we come into that conclusion. So I think we have to start stopping that painting a picture in our head, Venerable Thera.
And I thought also, like, if I add something to that also, Venerable Thera, now if we go back and think about the times we suffered in our lives, and then we always think, I had to be in the situation to understand what suffering is in terms like this, to understand how also others suffered and how they felt, like getting into someone else's shoes. That's what they said. So if we also speak about Lord Buddha before he attained enlightenment, he also chose to suffer for a certain period of time and see how it turns out. Then only he chose to be on the middle path. So do you also think if we, glom and integrate all that into one to ourselves and think about whether we should go through suffering to begin with, to understand and to come to a solution for the suffering, do you think it is important that we have suffered initially to understand how to escape from it, deviate from it?
Well, yes, Buddha's life, he went through suffering
Deliberately.
and it was not something that you must go through suffering to achieve something. It is not.
We shouldn't take that as a forced example
that's right.
and apply it for our day-to-day life.
But yes, so what I try to say, the major the suffering that we have is those ideas that we have and the incompatibility of those ideas with the reality. Reality is something else. The files or the notions that we have is something different.
Right.
And if you take any situation, any problem, whether it is family or country, whatever, you will see this is behind there. The ideas that we have in our mind is something else. The reality is something different. And this is where Buddha says the suffering. We have, imagine that, any situation, your parents, the way parents think and the young people, as the way you see things, there will be very big gap between.
Right.
And the parents try to impose their idea, this is what should happen, okay? And sometimes they are, I'm not saying that they are always away from the reality, but the time has changed. Situation has changed, the way young people think is different. But if you know the ideas that is in me as a father or mother is what is created about 25 years before, and the values I have is totally different from my son or daughter. This is where there's lots of clash happen. The parents have different files with different ideas, notions, and those notions are created in a different age, different context. Now you young people live in different context, and this is where Buddha says the real suffering is not the ordinary suffering, that dukkha or viparinama dukkha. It is not the suffering, it is something we all can. This is the suffering, okay? We suffer because of those unchanging, that rigid ideas created in us based on particular context. And now the context has changed, problem has changed, the people we are working is not the same people, but we think we have something, this is what should happen. Okay, this is what really the Buddhism, that when we talk about the suffering, and Buddha says the suffering, and then we will the tendency, we will see, oh, this religion talks of suffering only. No, suffering is to our inability to understand the files that we have, the notions we have are created in different contexts based on different situations, and we have to understand always things are changing, values are changing, and people are different, the context is different, so I have to change myself. So this is what we all, if we all are ready to change ourselves, then we will understand you better. Okay, you will understand myself better. Without having those notions in me, you will see the person before you. And this is the real suffering. That is what Buddhism suggests.
And Venerable Thera, I think in the previous episode also we spoke of this topic where we have to learn how to unlearn. So how do we do this? How do we begin with it?
Yes. If we, I mentioned particular sutra, Madhupindika Sutta, it explains the process of creating those notions, okay, having those files, how we create very rigid ideas in us. If we, so it's explained step by step how we see someone, and by just seeing someone, we don't create a file. Okay, when you walk, when you come here, I'm sure you pass certain people. If I talk about, did you see that person, you will say, yes, I saw someone, but I can't remember. It is not that you created a file based on that by mere seeing someone. It is a process. After seeing someone, and then we start arguing both, whether this person, this community or that community, and the behavior as you suggested, whether this is his nature, her nature, and all these things. After that, we created a certain solid idea, solid perception, and after that we live with those perceptions. I normally say we as human, any person, we are carrying millions of files. Okay, we have so many files based, created based on those ideas throughout our journey, and when something happens, we do not see the person, we do not live in the present moment, and why this person behave in this particular way, he was not the same, but what we do, we have files, we open it and read it and judge the person. If we know this process, then I think we will not judge people, right?
True.
We will be very kind to the person. He or she is passing through this particular situation. That is why she or he is behaving in this particular way. Then we will adjust ourselves without judgments. How I can help. Okay, that is where, and you pointed out that empathy, right? Empathy, it comes in Buddhism, karuna and mudita. Karuna is to understand, put myself in your situation when you are facing a sad situation. Okay, she is a mother, I'm also a mother. If I face this situation, how I will feel that? And after that, it is not helping someone with sympathy. Buddhism doesn't suggest that. Not with sympathy, but with empathy. Be that person and feel how that person feel, and then after that, no need to tell what to do. You feel that and you will spontaneously, that is karuna. And mudita is when you are happy, and if I am this person, how I will feel that. That is what you are feeling now. And then with that, empathy, then the jealous doesn't come. If, think like you, how if I am the, you are a father or you are a teacher, I'm also a teacher. If I am the one who faced this victory or happiness, how I will feel that. And then there is no jealous. So the empathy comes there. And
Then,
yeah.
in terms of that, I think there's a very important point that you bring out about empathy and, of course, understanding. In terms of, I think Sharifa brought out this point before, we meet people who are suffering sometimes. And in terms of that, sometimes a lot of people have an aversion to avoid people and suffering. All right, let them be, is sometimes what we hear. But it is sometimes better to share in their suffering, as you said, share in happiness and share in suffering. How do we actually help them in terms of understanding? Is it just a process of listening and empathizing with them, or is it just being there for them? What is the process of helping someone through suffering? Because it is a reality.
Yeah, that again, depending on the situation, our role will be different, right? And I like to answer your question, but very good question that you posed. Uh, why we have to help, why we have to, that is a very good question. Why, if we can ignore that, right? We can. There are people who thinks no need, and okay, and it is not my role.
Yeah.
Why? From Buddhist point of view, we are interconnected. Okay, whether you belongs to one religion or the other religion, or you belongs to this community, that community, we all are interconnected and we all are interdependent. So there is nothing called my happiness if you are unhappy. Okay, that is, we are connected. If we cannot think of a development destroying the environment, because we are part of the environment. So that is why we have to protect. Okay, there is no happiness called my happiness if you are unhappy, because we are interconnected and interdependent. That is why we have to share. We have to share the sadness or happiness. Okay, so that is why, I'm trying to come to the why we have. There are people who thinks we don't have a role. No, we have a role because we are interconnected and we are interdependent. And then how to do that? With that empathy, and if you feel that I am safe with this person or in this space, I am welcomed. No one judge because of my identity. No one judge because depending on my class or anything. And I am welcomed here without considering my religion. This is to make the safe space. That is very much important for you to feel this is a safe space for me. And then the trust you feel that with this person I can share my story. He or she will not tell with anyone else. That you cannot do it by words. The person should feel that. That is something you feel. Okay, so I like to share how this is something with the history that we discuss. We are 2,500 years after the Buddha, 2,020 years after the Jesus, and I think 1,300 years after the Muhammad. Okay, so with this history, what has happened, we have created our own spaces with our own symbols. Okay, if you go to a mosque, you have the particular architecture and the space and all that. And I, as non-Muslim, feel that I am not part of that space. It belongs to a particular community. When a Islam person comes to a Buddhist space and there are cloud walls and the stupa and all these buildings, and that person feel that I am not part of this place. So you will not feel that safety. You don't feel that this is a place I can go and tell my story. So this is something has happened through the history. We have all these symbols that creates the identity, and this belongs to this particular community, that belongs to the other community. I'm sure those religious leaders, they never created such spaces that rejects certain people and accepts certain people. And
Venerable Thera, according to what you just mentioned, I understand that now you mentioned about painting a picture in our head and we kind of come to conclusions. Do we belong here? Do we not belong here? Can we talk to this person? And I think it's because every religion has been originated from different parts of the world. And what happens is, I think in that part of the world, the architecture is different, the way they practice, the way they dress, and the climatic condition is different in a specific country. So maybe the attire and the design of a certain place of worship would be different to the other. So do we have to think about that also now? I think the process of learning and unlearning applies here, isn't it?
yeah, yes, um, yes, certain religions, different religions originated in different parts of the world, and it has a context and the culture associated with that religion. That is there, and it is their identity. Sometimes we have no right to say that you have to, change your identity, keep that identity. That's okay, but what is the role of religion? Okay, that is where not the people, as religious spaces, what is the role of religion? To welcome people, to listen to them, to have a space to come and tell the story. And for that, we have to maintain the space. And I do not say you have to change the architecture or anything. My question is, are you mindful about, okay? And then you can minimize him, and how to create a space that welcome people. I think first thing is the role of religion, and that is what we have to do, not to keep the identity or the community intact, but to help. And that is where I think there will be different views, there will be different institutions that keep the identity, but at least we will need some spaces where we welcome people, where we create the space mindfully that minimize that difference.
Make it welcoming to anybody.
That's right.
Any human being.
That's right. That's right. And the healing role of religion, most of the time we forget. Religion has this healing role where people come and tell their story. Even a murderer, that person has a story to tell, why he or she become, how. And without judging, that is where, without judging, let that person to speak, tell the story, and listen without judging. For that, we need that space. That is where I think, my whole own experience, I became a monk in a temple in down south Goal, and all the symbols are there. And when you pass that place, this is a Buddhist temple, and all the symbols are there, and Buddhists are coming. Once we created this space, Valpala Rahula's Institute, we thought we need a space where people belongs to any religion, or whether you practice a religion or not, that person to feel that I am welcome here, I can tell my story here, and that healing space. And there are people who have come with their stories, and once a couple, I think it is okay to share stories, right? Yes. A young couple came, and I welcomed them, and the young girl was with lots of sadness, and she started telling the story. They had to go for abortion because of the medical reason, and she was suffering with that pain. And I listened to her, and her young husband was, supporting. And after that, after letting her to, tell the story, we had a small loving kindness meditation session. Okay, and after that, that was a very short one, and after that I suggested come with your family, and we had a long session. And after that, while having a tea, I asked, and because I never knew that young couple, and I asked, how did you find this place and why did you decide to come to this place? And she said, I wanted to tell this story, but I didn't feel that I can go to my temple in the village, I can go and tell this story. And since she has seen what we are doing, the discussions and all that, she has felt that I can go to this place and tell my story. That is how they came. I think that feeling that she, when she was in that agony, if that person felt that I can go to that particular place and tell my story, that is the task of the religious space. That is what any religion has this role of healing, but with the history, that is something missing in our journey.
That's right.
Yeah.
So modern day suffering is something that we have to, go through our life, because these days we see, even though you say that sometimes modern day problems require modern day solutions, sometimes all the time the old knowledge has to be incorporated to whatever the solution that we give, including suffering, because when it comes to suffering, at the end we all want to stop suffering and then escape from it somehow. So Venerable Thari, if you speak about the suffering as the current society, we suffer without knowing sometimes. We just suffer because we think it's the way of life. And ultimately we all want to escape. So one way, when it comes to in Buddhism, we speak about nirvana. So we assume, and we've been taught, that nirvana is the one way we can stop suffering, because being born and living through, regardless how nourished life you live, is still suffering, because you die at the end only to be born again. So it goes in a circle. And to escape this suffering in a modern point of view, as humans, as Sri Lankans and as citizens of the world, we go through a lot of trouble. We go through a lot of, sometimes trouble equals the facilities we get. Everything we have, all the bonds, all sufferances, like reasons to suffer. So how do we escape this in a modern point of view? Because we are busy. We work. We go to work in the morning. Sometimes we go to school in the morning. We come back home, and then it goes in an endless circle sometimes to an end. And how do we look at this in a modern perspective?
Well, there are two ways of looking at the problem. One way is to keep this race and then find solution while keeping this race for competition and be the first and all these things. While keeping these things, how to find solutions. That is one way of looking at the problem. The other way is change the race, change the way of life. Okay, that itself will create the solution. These are the two ways of addressing the issue.
It's very unfortunate now when you say that, because we look at all the tasks we are assigned to, they tell you to race. That's the whole thing. I mean, you go to office and they tell you, you have to reach this target, and then targets are set because you have to race them. And it's very unfortunate to think about it, because like when you go to a school, you have to get a good grade. You go to work and then you have to achieve a target, but it's unfortunately strategized in that way.
Yeah.
So when it comes to surviving in the modern world, sometimes you might not be able to get out of it, because you have to do it in order to survive. Like you have to earn money, and you have to with money you can buy certain things, and then that's one way of surviving. So how do we still keeping up with the race, because at the end we want to achieve something. I mean, that's about being human. So while accomplishing that as well, do you think we could still escape, at least minimize suffering to an extent?
Yes. I will first address certain way I work with the people. Here there are few people who are working in the institute and even the university under my supervision. The way I look at them is they are not created, or they are not machines.
Yeah.
They are not robots. They are human beings. Then they come to the office, from their home. they have their own problems at home, okay, and they are not just a machine that we brought to the office to do certain job, okay, they are a story. So always I'm considerate of that, okay, that they are people, they are not created machine to do certain thing, they are human being, okay, there are limitations, okay. So I always suggest do your maximum, but don't think that you are a machine. I never think that you are a machine, okay. There will be failures, it's okay, that happens, you can make it, you can so that this is very much related to the supervisors or the heads of institutions. And then the new term is the emotional intelligence, right? To understand your emotions, that emotions come with your experience, and without rejecting that emotional your emotions, I cannot work with you, you are not a machine, okay. That intelligence is very much needed, okay. There only there you will be happy, you will do your best. If I disregard your emotions and expect something, you have to do this and that, you cannot do that. Within few days or few months you will, what is the word, burn out. After that you are
You'll be drained.
Yes, that's right. So always to think, treat you as a human who has emotions, right? That is very much needed. And then your role, right? How I overcome. Again, my suggestion is from Buddhist point of view, you are not a machine. You cannot achieve something, like a machine. You can try your best, but there is no a rule or something that since you have tried your best 100%, you will achieve the result that you are trying to achieve, because you are not the only thing that operates, right? There are other people, other factors that affect to achieving that. So this is where that I never use that word paticca or conditional genesis theory. We are not the only factor that creates certain thing. There are other factors, and if our way of understanding the world, based on the conditional genesis theory, I'm sure we can avoid the frustration. We can, yes, I did my best, but my effort is not the only reason, only way to achieve things. There are other factors, and other factors didn't work. So what to do?
Thank you, Venerable Thera. And today on Paths to Freedom discussion, we spoke about suffering, and as humans, how we tend to suffer throughout our lives unless we know how to address it through the visions of Buddhism and the teachings that are being taught to us. Today, the discussion was held at the Walpolo Rahul Institute, and as the lead, we had the senior lecturer, Venerable Galkande Dhammananda Thero, and he's also the head of the Walpolo Rahul Institute that we are here today at this moment. We'll be coming back next Poyaday as well, and today we wanted to have a blessed Poyaday ahead.